Well, the latest war over industrial relations is really starting to heat up, with Labor now vowing to fight the government's reforms that would give distressed businesses room to negotiate workplace agreements. The Morrison Government says that exemption could be the difference between a business emerging from a COVID-induced recession or going under, with workers losing their jobs.
It is not a groundbreaking change, and it's meant to draw the Fair Work Commission's attention and empower them to make an independent decision as the independent umpire in circumstances where a business thinks it needs to do something different in its EA to survive because of the impacts of COVID.
To discuss this and more, I'm joined now by the Herald Sun's business writer Terry McCrann in Melbourne, and business and financial commentator and the founder of the investment newsletter The Switzer Report, Peta Credlin, in Sydney. We're just getting his connection up. Terry, I want to start with you. Unexpected response or expected response from Labor and the unions. There was some sense the unions were at the table there with Christian Porter during the year, but it looks like he's moved away. Business groups have applauded this move by the government, say it'll pay a huge sort of dividend in terms of businesses that'll come through this COVID and recover on the other side. What's your opinion?
I think the expectation that it will pay a huge dividend is probably a little optimistic, Peter, but certainly in terms of allowing businesses, and it's not just about businesses surviving, it's about the jobs that they have. They also will survive if indeed this works and you can actually get some adjustment at the margin. We're only talking about at the margin. We're not talking about sweeping change. I think Christian Porter said it exactly there, that this is about a marginal difference. It's in the very specific context of the reality that a lot of businesses face, in their own terms, earth-shattering reality, coming out of the lockdowns of COVID. So this is not a big deal. It should be something that should be embraced because it's ultimately going to be the umpire that implements it. It's not going to be businesses imposing it on their workforces.
So you reject Sally McManus's view that this is work choices 2.0?
Yes, Peter, it's not, clearly. Yes, Sally McManus and her predecessors have fought in every ditch, and good luck to them in fighting in every ditch, but this is not a very deep ditch. This is a very shallow ditch. It's about a very marginal adjustment to the reality that a lot of businesses now face going into 2021.
Consumer confidence, it soared. It's now at its highest level since 2010, we're told. Westpac's Consumer Sentiment Index surged more than 4% in November. Chief Economist Bill Evans says that's only 8 months' sentiment has fully recovered, he says, from the COVID recession. How's this going to work going into Christmas? So we're going to have a Christmas sort of boom and a February bust, or do you think this will sort of even out, will start to really look like we're through it pretty much all the way through to Easter and beyond?
Well, I wouldn't go all the way to Easter, but clearly we're going to have a very good December quarter. The economy bounced back to some extent in the September quarter. It would have been a lot better, but for a certain state that we both live in, Peter, if Victoria had joined the party then. But Victoria was late to the party, and that's now working beneficially because it's acting as a supercharger. And you put that on top of these national indicators, which show that not only consumer confidence, but business confidence is way back. And it's not a surprise when you consider where interest rates are, 2%, people can borrow for a home loan, plus all that money that has been handed out through JobKeeper, which has led to record levels of saving, which consumers can now unleash as they go down to Christmas.
Talk to me about your reaction to these S&P downgrades this week. New South Wales 1 point, Victoria 2 points. Victoria hasn't looked good since that budget came down. At least New South Wales has certainly got plenty of spending, but it's more infrastructure, economic sort of rate return, whereas down in Victoria, a lot of it's a recurrent spend, not good value spending for taxpayers. What did you make of the move?
Well, the reality was this was always going to happen, given the explosion of debt, and you're right that New South Wales' explosion isn't anywhere as large as Victoria's, and it's primarily being spent on infrastructure, whereas the Victorian debt, a lot of it's going into concurrent spending, paying public servants, paying hospitals, running of hospitals and so on, not all that much into infrastructure. But at the end of the day, we're living in such a crazy world, Peter, with central banks forcing rates down effectively to zero, that the downgrade is going to make virtually no difference to the interest rate that either Victoria or New South Wales has to pay on its debt. And ultimately, going forward, the problem is not the rating, it's the level of debt. So if we ever go back to 7-8% interest rates on government debt, the fact that Victoria will have $150 billion of debt, the 8% on that is going to be where the pain is going to flow, not whether it would be 7.75 if we were still AAA rated. So it's the level of debt, not the rating, that's going to be the issue if we ever get back to high interest rates.